welcome back to 2021. Now what I'm going to do today is not to show you a battle, but when I've talked to you before about forces on the field, I've said that they've been built to a certain points value, and I've said 2,000, 3,000 points or somewhere in between. So if you've seen my other video on Let's Talk Rules, this one's going to be Let's Talk Points and how we build those forces. There's been some interest shown in that. Why do we use points to build forces? Well, like a chessboard, for instance, you start off with equal forces either side. Now, we know historically that that didn't happen, but this is a game after all. And so we set a limit on the points, and the two players build their armies up to those points. The beauty of this is, of course, that depending on the player's preference, the forces are always different. I, for instance, might go heavy on infantry, guns and less cavalry, or the other way around, etc., etc. So you never end up with two equal forces. What you end up is two forces of equal value. And then how you use them and the tactics and terrain that you employ is how you will win the game. So the other thing with that is the opponents build their forces first, then they go onto the table and it's decided who's going to defend. And the reason for that is, of course, if I knew beforehand I was defending, I'd build a defensive force. And as a commander, you don't get those choices. You generally walk onto the field with what you've got and you play from that point on. Another way of doing this in the past has been to, from a lottery type draw, find out what forces that you're going to have on the day. But we actually found that building them to a points value suited everyone and gave it a little bit more discretion, made it a little bit more enjoyable. So that's why we use points. Now, Tricolor, the rules that I use, in the book, it has all the information that you will need except to do with points. Now I say that because to get to these points, we have to do a little bit of block building first. I will choose 3 units. So it will be a British battalion, a French battalion and a Spanish battalion. We will look at how many men through the Tricolor rules or figurines make up that battalion. Then we will look at the standard value of the men in that battalion. We will then go to the national characteristics of those 3 countries and look at how that changes some of the values. And once that is done, we can then go to the values charts and give a soldier a points value. And of course, then he gets multiplied out by the number of actual soldiers in that unit. With Tricolor, of course, as I've said before, it's 1 equals 20. Alrighty, so let's get started on that, shall we? We have here in front of us a British battalion, often called a regiment, as in the regiment there was generally only 1 battalion serving overseas at any time, so the battalion was often called a regiment, not to get confused with that. In Tricolor, it's made up of 40 pieces. Each piece, of course, 1 represents 20. Now, let's have a look at how it's made up. From inside the Tricolor book, we have the makeup of all the units of all the armies that fought in the Napoleonic Wars. This one here, as you can see, is the British Army 05 to 15, and it's British infantry. Number of men per company, 4. Number of companies per battalion, 8. So 4 8 are 32 infantrymen, 1 company of lights and 1 of grenadiers. Another 4 and 4 make 8. 8 on the 32 makes the 40. Number of battalions per regiment, 1, with a regimental command consisting of a 4-man tray. So that tells you how to construct your British line battalion. The next page we look at is the values, the standard values of units. And I say standard values because they do change when we get to the national characteristics. However, let's have a look at what line infantry are worth. They are considered for morale as regulars. They fire normal, which is 1 as 1. They melee at 1 point per man, and they cannot go into open order. So that's a beginning, that's just a standard. Now we'll see how much that changes when we look at the national characteristics. Now as I said, each army has its national characteristics. And for the British, we can see here that British line infantry, due to their training, are considered as elites for purposes of both musket fire and, I'll just move that around a little bit, morale. Now that's extremely important because that changes the whole value of this battalion. British light infantry and grenadiers, of which we have a company of each, are considered as counting as 3 for each 2 firing. That's quite a reasonable markup. British light infantry and grenadiers check morale as if they were guards. So there's quite, and then it goes on to rifles and other things. So those first 3 A, B and C values there virtually change the whole makeup of this British force. Now we'll have a look at how we value it. There's 3 parts to this. There's the infantrymen, the lights and the grenadiers. So let's start with the line. So you can see here the line is considered as elites, we've been told. So that will cost you 1.5 points for each man. We have the firing power, elites as well, 1.5 purchase points. We have the melee power, which is regular, and that's 1 purchase point per man. And if we just go down a bit further, we'll find that the formation, it can't go into open order, so that's nothing. Weapons and muskets, that's nothing. We end up with 4 purchase points per figure in this battalion. Now let's have a look at the lights. Their morale is guard, so therefore that'll cost you 2 points per man. Their firing per hours is guard, 2 points per man, but they melee regularly, as regulars rather, 1 point per man, but they can go into open order, so that'll cost you half a point for each man, but they use muskets, so nothing there. Total value, 5.5 points per light figurine or infantry or soldier. And the grenadiers are over here, same thing, guards 2, firing as guards 2 points, morale as elites 1.5 points, but they can't go into open order and they use muskets, but that still comes out at 5.5 purchase points per figure. The difference being, of course, the lights are in open order, the guards aren't. The guards here fire better than the lights. All right, so what does that give us? Well, as you can see there, 32 line infantrymen at 4 points each, 128 points. 4 lights at 5.5, 22 points. 4 grenadiers at 5.5, 22 points. This battalion will cost you 172 points to purchase. Now, in comparison, we'll look at a French battalion. We're now looking at a French battalion, slightly smaller by 4 figures than the British battalion, and interestingly enough, both their grenadiers and their lights have 2 more figures in them than a British company of grenadiers or lights. So the French had more troops in those areas, but that of course meant that their actual infantry component was smaller, to the tune of 24 men. Alrighty, let's have a look at how they're made up. Okay, Grand Army 1812, infantry, number of men per company, 6. Number of companies per battalion, 4. So 24 infantry figures. 1 grenadier and 1 lights of 6 figures each, as we've just seen. Number of battalions per regiment, 3. and a regimental command consisting of 1 6-man tray. Of course, we only cost the infantry component of any battalion. The French national characteristics don't have all that much in them. French infantry charging in column add to their melee capabilities, count each 3 as 4 when melee occurs. As a French column approaches an enemy unit of regular or less, which has already had a morale retreat, that unit must again check morale. And then it goes on to guards and middle and young guards. So in the national characteristics, there's not really much that changes there. Now we'll have a look at how we cost it. We must always go back to the standard value as a starting line, always. So again, line infantry, morale regular, normal for firing, and melee 1 point per man, no open order, and light infantry and grenadiers as elites, 3 firers 4. Lights melee at 1 point and grenadiers at 2 points, and of course lights open order yes and grenadiers no. That's always your standard. Then we apply the national characteristics, which in this case don't affect those values. All right, line, they're regular, 1 purchase point. Firing capacity, regular, 1 purchase point. Melee, regular, 1 purchase point. Can't go into open order, and they have muskets. So therefore, a French infantry man costs 3 purchase points. If we have a look at the lights, they're elites, 1.5 purchase points. They're elites for fire, 1.5 purchase points. They melee as regular, so that's 1 purchase point. They can go into open order, 0.5 purchase points, and they have a musket. So therefore, 4.5 purchase points per light. And grenadiers, elites again, 1.5 for morale, firing as elites 1.5. Melee at 2 points a man, so that bumps it up to 1.5 purchase points. They can't go into open order, they have muskets, so they're 4.5 purchase points as well. And what does that give us as a total? Okay, a French battalion, 24 infantrymen at 3 points, 72 points. 6 lights at 4.5, 27 points. 6 grenadiers at 4.5, 27 points. So this French battalion will cost you 126 points to purchase. Cheaper than a British one, but of course it hasn't got the same firing capacity, morale capacity, and it's slightly smaller. But it's cheaper, so therefore you can have more of them. Now, in comparison, we'll have a look at a Spanish battalion. Here we have a Spanish battalion. It's smaller again than both the French and the British. Let's have a look at what it's made up of. Now, the Spanish comes under the British Army of 1805-15, and it simply states the number of men per company, 8, number of companies, 4 8 to 32, number of battalions per regiment, 3. Now, what is really interesting here is to note that you'll see there's no reference to lights or grenadiers. Apparently the line was purely infantry, and their lights and grenadiers were probably in their own battalions. So this battalion only has 32 infantrymen. So let's have a look at their value. Once again, we must always pop back to our basic unit values, and it's a line infantry, so morale regular, firing normal, melee 1 point, and open order 0. Now we'll go and have a look at the national characteristics and see if they change that. Right, national characteristics from the British armies. Let's have a look what it says. Spanish line infantry are considered as militia for purposes of both musket fire and morale. Now that's a huge denigration of the value of that battalion. Spanish light and guard infantry, well, we don't have any, so we won't worry about that. Spanish militia infantry, no. Spanish infantry melee normally. So that's something in their favour. And that's the national characteristics there. Now that will affect the costing. Let's have a look at the costing and see what this unit's worth. All right, Spanish. We know that their morale has been put back to militia, so that costs 0.5 of a point per man. Their firing power is the same, and as a militia, every 3 firers too. So they lose a third of their normal, what anyone else would call normal firepower, which is, as I said, quite a denigration of the effectiveness of that unit. So that's only going to cost you 0.5 per man. Now, with the melee, it said they do melee as regular, so that half a point there is actually 1 point, and that would make, with no open order and firing muskets, the cost of 2 points a man. We have no lights or grenadiers to worry about with this unit. Therefore, the cost of this Spanish battalion is simply 32 men at 2 points per man, 64 points. So there you have a comparison. The Spanish battalion, 64 points, the French, 126 points, and the British, 172 points. And from that, as you go to create your forces, you can have quite a mixture of units per value. Now, this applies to cavalry as well and artillery. I won't go through the whole process again. What I will simply do with cavalry is show you the types of issues, the morale, etc., that we use to value the cavalry, just to give you an idea, as I'm now hoping you understand how this works. So with cavalry, it's fairly similar. We have a morale type for the different units. We have a firing value, as some light units like lights and hussars have carbines. We have a melee power for the different types of cavalry: militia, regular, elites, light guard, cuirassiers and heavy guard. We have formation values. Some of them can go into open order, hussars, lights, etc. And because they're cavalry, they have an auto value of 2 points each added to them. And that is how you cost your various units of cavalry as you create them. With artillery, horse guns cost 175 points. Field guns and howitzers cost 200 points each. A heavy gun costs 225, and for the British, if they choose to buy a rocket battery, they can purchase one of those for 100 points. Okay, so there is how you use the points to build up your forces. Okay, so that shows you how we use purchase points to build the various forces that you see on the tables when we're playing. Tricolor is still around. They're not in print anymore, but I've seen them for sale on various gum trees, etc. And inside the book, it shows you how to build your battalions, their basic value, and then using the national characteristics, how you can change those basic values to get the national flavour of the unit that you're playing with. Okay, now the book doesn't have those charts for the purchase points in it. They were made up by our club, as I said, by a member whose name was Scott. I can't tell you his last name for privacy reasons, but he did that about 40 years ago, and it's so good that we have never found a need to update it or adjust it ever. So it's really quite spectacular. And because it's not under any patent, that's free to all. I'm happy for all of you to use that in any way you see fit. I think you'll find it useful for building armies of any rule sets. Alrighty, that's it for now. Back soon with another video for you. If you like it, please subscribe, and I hope you enjoy what I'm presenting to you. Thanks.